So I think most people who have followed Chinese fountain pens, or even this channel for long enough, should know about a fountain pen called the Jinhao 992. This fountain pen came out in, I think, 2017. It's been on most of my top Chinese fountain pen lists because I think the Jinhao 992 is not a particularly amazing pen, but it is a very good, I guess, utilitarian pen. It's very good at being, well, good. The pen is a very good price. It's affordable, I think about $2.50. It's well built, nicely constructed, pretty reliable. It looks nice. I think this is a great pen for people who are just starting out with fountain pens because it is pretty good on the quality control front, and it's pretty forgiving for the type of angle you use, because normally when you use a fountain pen, you have to have the breather hole perfectly up, otherwise you get issues. This pen is pretty forgiving, and it's nice and smooth. I like this pen. It's not particularly amazing. I think the nib is a little bit boring, a little bit dull, but it makes it onto most of my top lists. So you would imagine my surprise when I was on eBay or AliExpress a few months ago and I saw this pen, which I thought is obviously just another Jinhao 992. But imagine my surprise when I saw it was called the Wingsung 9133. And obviously I thought this was just someone mistyping the title of their eBay post, so I went ahead and bought it. I think it was $3, and when I showed up, imagine my surprise when it was a proper, fully fledged Wingsung, and imagine my shock when I picked both of these pens up, put them next to each other, and noticed the similarities between these pens. In fact, if you look at these pens side by side, you'll see the only difference between the two is the Wingsung has a metal top cap and a metal plug at the bottom, and a slightly different converter and a slightly different nib, but apart from that, they're pretty much identical pens, and I really do mean identical pens. The markings on the inside of the cap are identical, the markings on the bottom of the barrel are identical, even the rings around the cap, apart from saying Jinhao and Wingsung, they're pretty much identical. The only difference between them is these aren't really interchangeable because they do use differing threads on the caps, but pretty much identical pens. So I just want to talk about why I personally think that the Wingsung is a much, much better pen than the Jinhao. First of all, the specs. The specs, even though that these pens are pretty much identical, slightly do vary. So capped, this pen is 13.2 centimeters long, uncapped it's 11.5 centimeters, and posted it's 14. And I've always said this pen is very, very nice to hold. I think when you post this pen, it's very nice to feel in the hand. It is nice, and it's comfortable, it's a nice grip, there's a little bit of a flare at the bottom. I think it's very, very nice. Everyone that I've given this pen to really likes the feel of this pen. You know, that's why I've always loved this. It's such a nice step up from using any ballpoint. That's why I've always shoved this on my top Chinese fountain pens list. Though the weight is a nice step up from the 992. Because of the extra bit of metal, it does weigh a little bit more, and you can notice it. So capped, this pen weighs 18 grams, which is about 2 grams more than the Jinhao, and uncapped it's 11 grams. And you can really feel that. This pen is really back heavy. You can really feel that, and I think it's very, very nice. When I was always holding the Jinhao, you know, even though that it is only 2 grams lighter, I was always wanting a little bit more weight from it. When I dropped this pen, I thought it was a very nice weight, but now I think it is very, very nice now that there's a little bit more metal. Another thing about this pen that I'll also say while I'm here is The metal stopper at the bottom of the pen seems to have solved the infamous Jinhao 992 cracking issue. I've had this pen for about 4 months now. I've used it a fair bit, and I haven't noticed any cracking, and I've searched on the internet for cracking of this pen, and I haven't seen many people report cracking of this pen, whereas if you look at the Jinhao 992, a lot of people do report cracking, which, has always been an issue for this pen. Normally, if you wanted to eyedrop this pen, you would have to put a little bit of epoxy in the bottom, just in case it did crack, obviously to prevent leaking. Here, thankfully, there's no cracking, but obviously there's metal in the bottom of the pen, so you are going to have to put a little bit of epoxy in the bottom of the pen if you want to eyedrop it. And as someone who has eyedropped this pen before, I think it's a brilliant idea. This pen eyedrops really well. You have to put a little bit of silicone grease on the threads of the pen, but when you eyedrop it, you'll be using this pen for months. If we take a look at the converter that comes with the pen. Oh, and on the subject of eyedropping, these pens come pre-installed with an O-ring, which is really good. It's pretty much screaming to be eyedropped. Now, one thing that I've also liked about the Jinhao and this pen is there's quite a fair amount of plastic here where the threads are, which means you can apply a fair amount of force to this pen and it's not going to break. And I always look out for that when I'm reviewing plastic pens. Obviously, the fountain pen comes with a Wingsung nozzle with this Wingsung branded converter, and these converters are alright. I think they hold about 0.8 mils of ink. I've never had any of them fail on me, and they come with the pen. They're pretty good. Okay, let's talk about the nib of this fountain pen, and it's the nib really where this fountain pen is so much better than the Jinhao 992. And I've always said right from the get-go, the Jinhao 992, while it has a really nice and well-constructed body, the nib is really where it lets the side down. I've never said it's a bad nib by any means, though this nib here has always been, I guess, boring. There's no character to the nib. When you write with it, yes, it's buttery smooth, but it's really hard. You can press down. There's not going to be all that much flex from the nib. It's really boring. And when you use a fountain pen, you always want there to be character from the nib. But for this one, yes, it's better than writing with a ballpoint pen, but it's not that much better. It's always been boring, and that's what I think is so amazing about the Wingsung 9133. This one has Wingsung's stainless steel nib. It's a nib that you will find on a lot of their other cheaper fountain pens. Cheaper fountain pens such as this. This is the Wingsung 3001, and this is where I first encountered the same nib on the Wingsung. This one here, and I reviewed this I think 1.5 years ago, and back then I wasn't too happy about this nib. There were a lot of issues with it, and to be fair, this was when Wingsung were first becoming mainstream, well, at least on eBay, and when everyone was starting to review them. This is obviously one of their earlier nibs before they'd, I guess, refined their manufacturing process, and this one here really wasn't all that amazing. It was scratchy, it had flow issues, it was inconsistent, hard starts. There were a lot of issues. So obviously in the 1.5 years since I've reviewed that pen, they obviously refined and changed the way that they've made their nibs and feeds, because this nib here is really amazing. For a $3 pen, I am very, very happy with it. First of all, like most of the other Wingsung pens that I've bought, they've obviously got the grinding process down to an art form. Really, really good grinding on this nib. It's really nice. It's not butter smooth, but it's very, very nice. When you use this nib, you're going to really enjoy loving it, because when you use it, there's a little bit of flex in the nib. It's not as hard as nails. It's nice and springy. There is some feedback when you use the nib, and if you press down, it's going to be able to flex. You're going to get some nice line variation, and it's fun to use, and that at the end of the day is something that I always look out for when using a fountain pen. Is it fun to use? This one here for a $3 pen, I think it's fun to use, more so than say the Wingsung 3008, which I think is an amazing pen, but that nib doesn't flex all that much. This one here flexes, you get some nice line variation, a little bit of contrast, and that is really what I love in a nib. The only downside to this nib is it does hard start every now and then. Writing consistency and, I guess, reliability is one of the downfalls of this pen. It will hard start. That's obviously something that they haven't fixed, and it will only hard start maybe once every 2 or 3 pages, but it does hard start, and all you have to do is go over the letter again and it will flow. It is something that I should mention, but it obviously hasn't dampened the experience of using this pen, because I really have enjoyed it. I think it is a great amount of fun to use. Alright, welcome to the writing sample. Welcome to the writing sample for the Wingsung 9133. 9133. This has the fine nib on it, and the ink that I'm using is Monteverde Ocean Noir. I really do like this ink. I started using it again. I like it because it's a nice, deeply saturated blue. I think it's really underrated ink. And obviously, as you can see, Rhodia. Let's get a quick writing sample out of the way, shall we? And as you can see from the writing sample, it went pretty well. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but right here, right at the beginning of the top of the T, it actually did hard start a little bit. You can't really see it. It is very, very slight and subtle, but as I did mention a few times beforehand, it does hard start a little bit every now and then, and it obviously did here. But apart from that, I think it was a very nice writing sample. When you're writing fast and writing at everyday speeds, you really can't see all that much line variation, but there is certainly a variation in ink. A lot of the downstrokes, such as here and here on the K, are darker than the upstrokes, say, on the Fox, the F on the Fox right here. So you can see a little bit of variation, though if you slow down and take your time and have a bit of fun, you can get some very nice contrast. And when you do slow down, it does look very, very nice. And that's really what I look out for. I enjoy doing this sort of writing so much. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. And that's what I like about this compared to the, where is it? The Jinhao 992. And I will show you writing from it in a minute. But first of all, let's take a look at the line variation. So this is the pen, and it hard started once again. So this is the pen nib with no pressure whatsoever. And this is building up pressure, and this is pretty much as much pressure as I would dare to push. So no pressure and pressure. So you get some very nice contrasts, and I think it looks very, very nice. In terms of natural variation in the nib, there isn't all that much. The grinding in most Wingsung nibs is pretty consistent in making it, the side strokes and downstrokes being pretty much the same. In terms of wetness, I've only just refilled the nib, so I think it might be a little bit wetter than normal, but for a fine nib, this is pretty nice. In terms of reverse writing, Usually for Chinese fountain pens, it's pretty smooth, but this one here is pretty scratchy, though you certainly can do reverse writing. And I'll quickly give you a writing sample from the Jinhao 992, because I think I'm using Noodler's Black, and as you're going to see, no issues whatsoever. This pen does write, though the biggest issue is its lack of character. So, if I want to slow down, there really isn't all that much nice writing to be gotten from this nib. It's very bland, very boring, and that's why I like this nib so much more. And there you have it, a review of the Wingsung 9133. And I gotta say, I think it's a shame that this pen, for most people, has really been overlooked by so many people. And I'm not sure why, because I see a lot of people still buying Wingsung 3008s all the time, but I rarely see people buying this pen. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because the Jinhao 992, which is pretty much identical, is the pen that came here first and is much more, I guess, prevalent on eBay. I'm not sure why, because this pen here, by most accounts, is much better than this pen. I love the Jinhao 992, but I just think this pen, because it is a little bit heavier and because the nib is way more fun to write with, is certainly the pen to go. And yes, this pen is slightly more expensive. I think you'll be paying an extra 50 cents for this pen, but I honestly think it is worth it. Now, at the end of the day, this is still only a Wingsung 9133, i.e. a little bit better version of the Jinhao 992. And that's put it in a position that I've put the Jinhao 992, because while this pen is fun to write with, I do think this pen should remain as the go-to beginner fountain pen for people who are looking for pens on eBay. This pen is good, it looks nice for a $3 pen, it works pretty well out of the box, it is mostly reliable, it's very comfortable, but it just doesn't have that, you know, oomph that other pens such as the Wingsung 3008 have that put it on the top of my list. So while this is a great step up from the 992, it's still just that one, you know, utilitarian fountain pen that everyone should like but not love.